Solaria's green skin shimmered with sweat as she pressed her knee into the human's chest, pinning him against the blazing canyon floor. Her bright red hair, braided with ritual bone beads that marked her victories, whipped in the hot wind against her sharp features. In her hand was a ceremonial dagger, forged from meteoric iron that fell when her ancestors first claimed this land. Its blade caught the sunlight, casting crimson reflections across the canyon walls. The human beneath her should have been begging or screaming. Instead, he lay still, his weathered face split by a grin. His teeth were too white for someone who had lived years in the outer colonies. A cut above his eye dripped blood, and his tactical vest was torn from their brutal chase through the sharp terrain. Yet his gray eyes showed no fear. "Any last words, human?" Solaria growled, her accent adding harsh edges to the standard tongue. The blade hovered inches from his throat, steady despite her racing pulse. This kill would restore her honor. This kill would prove she belonged among her clan's finest hunters. The human's grin widened. "Yeah," he rasped, voice dry and edged with an accent she couldn't place. "You're holding it wrong." The words struck like a blow. Wrong? She was Solaria of the Crimson Hunt, trained in 17 killing forms, heir to a blade tradition spanning 14 generations. Her grip was flawless, thumbs set for control, fingers wrapped with perfect tension taught by masters themselves. Rage surged in her chest, hot as the desert air. With a snarl, she drove the blade down. Then the impossible happened. The human shifted, not wildly, not desperately, but with a subtle movement that redirected her strike. Her wrist twisted, her grip faltered, and the ancient dagger slipped from her hand. It landed in the sand with a whisper, the hilt jutting upright like a marker stone. Solaria stared at her empty hand. The human sat up calmly, brushing sand from his torn shirt. "Told you," he said, still smiling. In 23 cycles of life, she had never lost her grip. It was unthinkable, humiliating. How? The word escaped before she could stop it. The human, Alex, she recalled from the bounty posting, unscrewed his canteen. "Mind if I drink?" Desert heat makes philosophy thirsty work. She should have attacked, should have ended him with blade, hands, or plasma charges. Instead, she found herself nodding. He drank deeply, then studied her with unsettling calm. "You really want to know?" he asked. "Tell me." The words came out like a demand, though even she heard the desperation in them. "Your grip's perfect," Alex said, leaning back against a boulder with ease. "Textbook. I'm guessing you've trained since you could walk." "Since I could hold steel," she admitted, hating the confession. "Thought so. You know every form, every motion. But you hold your blade like someone who's never feared losing it. That's the problem. The moment you believe you can't lose, you already have." The logic made no sense, yet she couldn't deny what had happened. Solaria retrieved her dagger, brushing off sand. Its meteoric edge remained sharp. She shifted into her 7th stance, a killing form designed for close combat. "Show me again," she ordered. Alex shook his head. "Once was enough," I said. "Show me." Her voice thundered through the canyon, but he remained unfazed. "And I said no," he replied, standing with calm precision. "You're not ready. You're just angry I broke your illusion." He dusted off his pants and began walking deeper into the canyon. She tightened her grip on the blade, fury burning, but followed his trail in silence. He never looked back. The Crimson Hunt amphitheater rose from living rock, its walls echoing with the rhythm of blades as young hunters practiced their forms. Solaria entered through the main gate, head high though failure burned inside her like acid. Warriors paused, watching her dusty arrival with puzzled eyes. She carried no trophy, no proof of the kill. By the time she reached the central chamber, word had spread. The matron sat in judgment on a throne of black stone worn smooth over centuries. Around her stood the clan's elite hunters, their trophies gleaming proudly. The matron, scarred and aged, studied her with eyes still sharp as steel. "Solaria of the Crimson Hunt," her voice cracked like a whip. "You were tasked with taking the head of the human mercenary who trespassed on our sacred grounds. Where is your trophy?" Silence filled the chamber. Dozens of eyes weighed on her, some with pity, many with scorn. Cathra, her lifelong rival, smirked like a predator. "I encountered the target," Solaria said, her voice steady despite her turmoil. "But I did not claim him." Gasps and murmurs spread until the matron's raised hand silenced them. "You did not claim him?" She repeated softly, dangerously. "Explain." But how could she explain the canyon? How could she admit her certainty had crumbled? That all her training had failed? "He escaped," she said finally, the lie bitter on her tongue. Cathra's laughter rang out like a blade striking stone. "Escaped from Solaria the Swift? Solaria the Short-Handed? How remarkable!" Silence. The matron's command cracked through the hall. The chamber was silent, but the matron's pale eyes stayed locked on Solaria. "You dishonor yourself and your bloodline with this failure." Her voice snapped like a whip. "For 14 generations, your family has brought glory to the Crimson Hunt. You were given one task, and you return empty-handed." The ceremonial staff struck the stone floor 3 times. "Solaria of the Crimson Hunt, you are cast out. Return only when you have claimed your quarry's head, or one worthy of your own." Solaria fled into the desert, exile burning behind her like a funeral fire. 3 days later, she found him among the ruins of an old way station. Its broken walls stood as relics of a forgotten age. Alex sat in the shade of a shattered arch, carefully cleaning a plasma rifle scarred by battles on a dozen worlds. He didn't look up when she approached, only spoke when she was close enough to strike. "Took you longer than I thought," he said calmly, still focused on his weapon. "I expected you back the same day." Her hand touched the hilt of her dagger, but she didn't draw it. The memory of her humiliation in the canyon was still raw. "Why didn't you kill me when you had the chance?" she asked. "Same reason you're not trying now. You want answers more than revenge. You want to know how I made you lose your grip." Alex laughed. "You're not ready. You're desperate. Come back when you can admit everything you believe might be wrong." He stood and began to walk away. "Where are you going?" she called. "South. There's a trading post 3 days from here. I'll resupply, maybe catch a ship before your people send someone more capable." The insult stung. Yet Solaria found herself impressed by his boldness. "I'm coming with you." Alex turned, skeptical. "Not a chance. Why would I want company, especially from someone sent to kill me?" "Because you could have killed me 3 days ago, and you didn't. Because you could have killed me just now, and you didn't. Whatever your reason, you don't want me dead." He studied her for a long moment, then gave a crooked smile. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "I'm exiled," she replied. "What difference does it make?" "Fine, but we do this my way. You follow my lead. No debates about honor or tradition." The words grated against every instinct, but Solaria nodded. Alex shouldered his pack and started walking. "Then let's move. And keep that blade sheathed, unless I say otherwise. The way you hold, it tells everyone what kind of fighter you are. And what kind is that?" His smile was sharp as steel. "The kind that's never known fear." They walked in silence. Alex moved with practiced ease, alert to every detail. Solaria watched him closely, scarred, seasoned, dangerous, yet aware of everything around him. "You're staring," Alex said without turning. "I'm observing. Try again." "What do you see?" She focused. "You favor your right side. You check behind you every half-minute. You're cautious, but not paranoid. You expect danger, but you don't fear it." "Exactly. Fear and caution aren't the same. That's why I didn't fear you in the canyon." "You feared me?" she asked, surprised. "I feared what you stood for, blind certainty," Absolute conviction. Those are the most dangerous forces in the universe. Before she could respond, Alex froze and raised a hand. She stopped, senses reaching outward. Then she heard it, the faint hum of repulsor engines growing nearer. Raiders, Alex whispered, moving toward a rocky outcrop. 3, maybe 4 vehicles. Fast. Solaria's hand went to her dagger, but Alex caught her wrist. Not yet. First rule of survival, don't fight unless you must. Second rule, if you fight, make sure you win. They crouched behind the rocks as the raiders came over a ridge, engines screaming. The vehicles were crude machines, part speeder, part tank, part nightmare bristling with weapons and crewed by men who looked just as savage. Slavers, Alex muttered grimly. They work the routes between here and the outer colonies. Bad news for us. Why? They've got heat sensors that track for miles. They've already found us. The lead vehicle veered sharply toward them, the others spreading out to cut off escape. So we fight, Solaria said, drawing her blade. Not like that. Alex pressed her weapon back into its sheath. Watch and learn. Raiders closed in fast, their machines throwing up dust that turned the desert into a swirling haze. Solaria could see their faces now scarred, harsh, and hungry for blood. She counted at least 12 fighters spread across 4 vehicles, each armed with weapons deadly enough to erase a person in seconds. Alex suddenly stood. Solaria blinked in shock as he stepped out from cover, his hands raised in what looked like surrender. The raiders spotted him right away, slowing their approach. Their leader, a towering brute with more metal than skin across his face, climbed down and advanced. A plasma caster hung lazily in his grip. Well, well, the raider's voice grated like rusted gears. What have we here? Someone lost. Very lost, Alex replied lightly. Name's Morrison. Independent salvager. Just heading to the Broken Spine trading post. The raiders. Mechanical eyes flickered as he scanned Alex. Not showing up in any of my databases. Morrison. That's the point, Alex said with a small grin. I pay good money to stay out of databases. A man's got to eat, the raider laughed, sharp and cruel. Oh, you'll feed us just fine. You and that green prize hiding behind the rocks. Solaria tensed, but Alex's tone stayed calm. Now that's the problem. She's not much into sharing. She'll learn. Maybe, but here's the thing. Alex shifted slightly, his stance tightening. I'm not much into teaching. What followed lasted less than 3 seconds. Alex struck like lightning, snapping the raider's wrist and dropping him with a nerve strike. He rolled behind the leader's vehicle, pulling open a side panel. Every salvage rig has one, he called. And they never lock them down. Sparks flew as the vehicle collapsed in failure. He moved seamlessly through the raiders. Catching an axe mid-swing, he redirected the attacker into the dirt. A quick kick filled another's plasma rifle with sand until it burst apart. Use the environment. Alex shouted. Everything counts. Solaria began to see it. The desert itself wasn't just a battlefield. It was a weapon. Sand blinded eyes and clogged gear. Rocks gave cover or became missiles. The sun's glare forced enemies to fight half-blind. She adapted fast. When a raider cornered her at a boulder, she let his own charge slam him against the stone. When another tried pinning her with gunfire, she used the glare from wreckage to blind him before striking. The fight ended within minutes. The surviving raiders fled, leaving bodies and wrecks behind. Solaria stood in the silence, her blade still clean. She breathed hard, though exhilaration flickered in her chest. Not bad, Alex said, checking the fallen for supplies. You're starting to think, not just react. Is that what you meant back in the canyon? She asked. Part of it. He looked up thoughtfully. You're learning to see the whole picture, not just the target. That's the first step. And the second? Knowing why you're fighting at all. Alex pulled a water recycler from the wreckage. Come on, we need distance before they return with more. They pressed on. Rock gave way to endless dunes, just heat, her, and him. As they sheltered beneath a broken cum tower, Alex continued. When you're outnumbered 10-1, you can't fight the way they expect. Be water. Flow around obstacles. Strike where they don't defend. But you were a soldier, Solaria said. You had training and order. How is that so different? Tell me about your sister, Alex countered. Solaria turned away. I don't want to. Then I'll start, he said quietly. My team was the best 3 years, 7 missions, never lost anyone. Until I kept them in a fight we should have left. Pride killed them. Sometimes retreat is survival. Solaria's chest tightened. My sister Vara was to inherit my mother's blade. In a clan war, she fought in single combat, but hesitated at the final blow. She wanted to show dominance, not kill. The enemy faked weakness, then struck. She died because she chose mercy. So now you're desperate to prove you won't repeat her. Mistaken failing at it. Alex leaned back, eyes on the star-scattered sky. Solaria followed his gaze. You humans always stare at stars, she murmured. Not all of them, Alex said softly. Just the rare ones, finally some honesty, she said. He stood, shouldering his pack. You're fighting the wrong battle. You're so focused on earning your sister's blade. You've forgotten to ask if the blade deserves you. Before she could answer, Alex was already moving. We've got 2 hours of daylight. Let's reach the trading post before scavengers strip the best salvage. They walked in silence, her thoughts churning. The desert shifted as they neared civilization wreckage, giving way to scattered homes, then into sprawling clusters of scrap-built shelters. Broken spine rose around the remains of a crashed cargo hauler, its shattered frame forming the settlement's main street. Here, desperate travelers searched for passage between worlds. Alex navigated the chaos with ease. Solaria, however, faltered at the crush of bodies and the roar of countless tongues. Humans mingled with creatures she had never imagined, ranging from strange to entirely alien. Stay close, Alex murmured. Hand resting on his sidearm, Alex muttered. Places like this eat the unprepared alive. They secured a room at a hostel that was barely an improvement over camping in the open desert. 2 beds, a water recycler that only worked part of the time, and walls thin enough to catch every conversation from the next room. Still, it was shelter. After days in the relentless heat, Solaria was thankful for even that much. Tomorrow, we sort out transport, Alex said, dropping onto his bed with a tired sigh. There's usually a freight captain willing to take passengers, if you're not too choosy about the destination. And then what? Solaria asked. Then we part ways. I find work, you. Well, you figure out life after exile. The offhand reply cut deeper than she expected. Over the past few days, she had grown used to Alex's steady presence, his calm confidence, the way he challenged her without belittling her. The thought of going back to isolation, to the endless hunt and kill existence that had defined her, felt unbearable. What if I don't want us to go our separate ways? Alex paused while cleaning his rifle, his expression unreadable. What are you suggesting? You said I need time and experience. Travel with you. Teach me what you know, fighting, strategy, how to see the bigger picture. I'm not looking for a partner. I'm not asking to be your partner. I'm asking to be your student. He set the weapon aside, gray eyes studying her with the piercing intensity she was beginning to recognize. And what do I get out of this arrangement? The question unsettled her. In her clan, knowledge was passed through bloodlines and apprenticeships, not negotiation. What do you want? An honest answer. Why would an elite warrior be so desperate to learn from a washed-up human mercenary that she's ready to leave everything behind? The truth lodged in her throat, too heavy to swallow, too sharp to speak. But Alex waited, silent and patient. Finally, the words came. Because everything I've known has failed me. My training, my traditions, my idea of strength. It all collapsed the moment you showed me I was holding my blade wrong. I need to know what comes after. Who I am when I'm not defined by my ancestors' expectations." Alex nodded slowly, as if she'd confirmed something he already suspected. "All right. I'll teach you. But properly. No shortcuts. No rushing because you think you get it. And no returning to your people until you're ready. How will I know when I'm ready?" His smile was faint, enigmatic. "You'll know." The weeks that followed blurred into sweat and steady progress. Alex broke down everything she thought she understood about combat and rebuilt it from the ground up. He showed her how to read opponents through subtle cues, how every move in a fight was both question and answer. "Everyone tells a story," he said during sparring. "How they breathe, how they grip a weapon. It tells you who they are and where they'll break." Solaria began to see combat differently, not as brute force, but as dialogue. She admired Alex's economy of motion, never more strength than needed, never an attack that left him overexposed. But the hardest lessons weren't physical. They were about questioning the beliefs that had shaped her entire life. "Why do you fight?" Alex asked one evening as they shared ration packs and recycled water around a small fire. "To protect my people, to uphold honor, to prove myself. Those are external reasons. I'm asking about you. Strip away the clan, the legacy, the need to prove anything. Why do you, Solaria, choose to fight?" The question haunted her through restless nights and long days of travel. She searched her memories, wondering when killing had become instinct. Had she ever truly chosen, or had she only walked the path carved out by her ancestors? The answer revealed itself during a clash with claim jumpers trying to steal a salvage site. Facing 3 attackers with plasma rifles, Solaria moved with fluid precision. But this time, instead of cold calculation, she felt something different, a fierce urge to protect Alex, pinned behind weak cover. She flowed between their strikes, redirected their aggression, and disabled them without killing. 2 fled, dragging their wounded comrade to safety. "You held back," Alex observed, gathering their gear. "They weren't trying to kill us," she replied. "Just scare us off." Seemed unnecessary to end them for that. Alex's smile was genuine, warmer than his usual smirk. "Now you're beginning to see the difference between strength and violence." As months passed, Solaria's view of the universe shifted. She saw nuance in moral choices, the way context could turn heroes into villains, and the reverse. She watched Alex talk their way out of conflicts that could have ended in blood. She saw him help strangers with nothing to give in return. She witnessed his mercy toward enemies who had tried to kill them moments earlier. "Compassion isn't weakness," he told her when she questioned his decision to share their medical supplies with wounded raiders. "It's the strongest thing there is, the choice to help even when you get nothing back." But the true test came when she received a message on a trading station in the neutral zone. A courier, well paid to track her down, delivered a sealed packet marked with the symbol of the Crimson Hunt. Its contents were brief and devastating. The clan was dying. In the months since her exile, corruption had spread through the leadership like a plague. The matron had begun executing hunters based on whispers and personal grudges. Old alliances were broken, and rivals who once clashed now stood united against her. Their society's foundation was unraveling. "They need me," Solaria said, staring at the message with conflicted feelings. "Do they?" Alex asked. "Or do they just need someone to blame when it all falls apart?" It was a fair point, and one Solaria could not answer with certainty. But as she read the desperate pleas from hunters she had grown up with, she felt an obligation not to the leaders, but to the people who would suffer if the Crimson Hunt collapsed. "I have to go back," Alex nodded, unsurprised. "Then we go back. You think I'd miss the chance to see how this ends?" The journey home took 2 weeks, traveling routes Solaria had not crossed since her youth. When they finally descended to her birth world, she barely recognized the land below. The great amphitheater that once held her people was scarred with plasma burns and collapsed walls. The training grounds where she had learned her first forms were abandoned. Practice weapons shattered across the floor. They landed at a small port several kilometers from the stronghold, using Alex's contacts for transport and local intelligence. The truth was worse than the message suggested. The matron had declared herself supreme arbiter of the clan, purging anyone who challenged her unstable rule. Laws were abandoned, replaced by terror. Dozens were already dead. Those who remained were trapped too afraid to resist, yet just as afraid of what their silence was enabling. Classic death spiral, Alex said as they studied the reports. Leadership loses legitimacy, then clamps down harder instead of fixing the problem. That only destroys trust faster. Eventually, everything collapses. Can it be stopped? Solaria asked. That depends. How much power does tradition still hold? Are there any elders respected enough to stand against her? Solaria thought quickly through the clan's hierarchy. There's the circle of mothers, the matriarchs of the great bloodlines. But they've always deferred to the matron on law and custom. Then we need to give them a reason to stop deferring. Alex replied. They approached the stronghold under cover of night, using the infiltration skills Alex had taught her. The guards were too few, and those present seemed more concerned with internal threats than external ones. First sign of decay came in the outer chambers. The walls, once lined with trophies of great hunts, now displayed the severed heads of executed clan members. Solaria recognized them, hunters she had trained beside. Elders who had questioned small policies, even young ones guilty only of belonging to the wrong bloodline. This is madness, Solaria whispered, horrified. This is fear, Alex corrected. Fear of losing power. Fear of being exposed. Fear of admitting mistakes. It makes people do things they'd never imagine otherwise. They slipped deeper into the stronghold, avoiding the main halls where loyal guards patrolled. Alex's training in reading structures and security patterns allowed them to move like shadows through what should have been an unbreachable fortress. The sound of voices led them to a small ceremonial chamber. What they found froze Solaria's blood. Kathura knelt in the center, hands bound, while the matron stood above her with an executioner's blade. You are accused of sedition, the matron declared, her voice ringing against the chamber walls. Of spreading lies and discord, of defying rightful authority. Kathura's response was defiant despite her chains. I questioned your sanity, old crone. There's a difference. The matron's face twisted in rage. Your bloodline ends with you, traitor. Let your death be a warning to all who would follow. Solaria moved forward, but Alex's hand stopped her. Not yet. Wrong angle. Too many guards, no way out. This isn't the time. She'd be killed. And if you charge in now, you'll die too. Then who will be left to help anyone? It was the hardest lesson Alex had taught her. The discipline to injustice when rushing in would only make things worse. Every instinct urged her to fight, but she forced herself to stay still, to think tactically, not emotionally. The matron raised the blade, its edge catching the firelight. But before she could strike, another voice broke through the heavy silence of the chamber. I call for the right of challenge. Solaria stepped into the chamber's center, her blade drawn and steady. He had shown her fear. Now she would show them choice. The gathered hunters fell silent, recognizing the decision in her eyes. She had not returned home, she had come to change everything. It was an ancient law, rarely used, that allowed an exiled hunter to come back and face judgment through combat. The matron could not refuse without admitting that the old traditions had lost their power. Such an admission would weaken her rule more than any open rebellion. Yet instead of fighting herself, she turned to her champion, a massive hunter whose scars revealed a history of brutal campaigns. Vorush will stand for me. Let the gods judge your worth through his blade. Vorush embodied everything Solaria had once wanted to be: disciplined, precise, fully loyal to the clan's ways. He stepped into the chamber with mechanical precision, his weapon held in perfect textbook form. Solaria met his gaze across the sand-covered floor, her own blade steady. But as she took her stance, she realized something had changed. The rigid form she had once mastered now felt like chains, confining instead of empowering. "Begin," the matron ordered. Vorish struck first, his blade cutting arcs through the air with flawless technique. Solaria met his attack with familiar movements, until suddenly her style shifted. She flowed around his strikes like water, refusing to meet force with force. When he swung high, she wasn't there. When he lunged with precision, she deflected with ease and countered from an unexpected angle. "What sorcery is this?" Vorish demanded, confusion breaking through his hardened features. "No sorcery," Solaria replied, her voice calm in the midst of battle. "Only a new way of seeing." She began using what Alex had taught her, turning the environment into an ally. The chamber's torches cast shifting light and shadow, which used to disrupt his perception. The sand beneath them became a weapon, kicked up to blind, shifted to unbalance. Yet more than tactics, she used insight. Vorish had been trained by the same system as she had. His mastery assumed all opponents followed the same rules. Against someone who did not, his perfection became weakness. The end came suddenly. Vorish committed to a final strike aimed at Solaria's heart with flawless accuracy. But she wasn't where the form predicted. Instead, she was at his side, her blade resting at his throat. The chamber held its breath in silence, broken only by their harsh breathing. "How do you hold your blade so lightly yet strike with such precision?" Vorish asked, awe in his voice. Solaria glanced at her weapon, seeing it differently now. Her grip was flexible, adaptive, ready to shift as needed. "Because I no longer fear losing it," she answered, the words rising from deep understanding. Instead of delivering the fatal blow tradition demanded, Solaria stepped back and lowered her blade. "I claim victory, but not your life. You fought with honor, Vorish. That deserves respect." Shock rippled through the hunters. To spare a defeated enemy was unheard of, but the act carried undeniable power. Solaria had proven her strength in combat, then revealed her wisdom in mercy. The matron's face darkened with rage. "Kill him. The law demands it. The law is what we choose to make it," Solaria interrupted, her voice carrying new authority. "And I choose to make it more than blind vengeance." She turned to the hunters, speaking so all could hear. "Look at what we've become. We once fought to protect, now we fight to destroy. We once honored strength, now we worship fear. Blasphemy!" The matron shouted. "Caesar, she defies our sacred ways." But the guards did not move. Solaria's actions had shown them another kind of strength. "I don't seek to end our traditions," she continued. "I seek to fulfill them. Our first law is that strength protects the weak. When did we forget that without wisdom, strength is only brutality?" The chamber erupted in argument. Some called for her execution, but more than Solaria had dared to hope began nodding in agreement. Months of corruption had left many questioning the clan's path. Seeing her control slipping, the matron made a desperate move. "Guards, execute this traitor." Still, the guards did not act. They too were listening. "I'll do it myself," the matron cried, rushing forward with her blade. But anger clouded her movements. Solaria sidestepped her easily. The old leader stumbled, unbalanced, and would have fallen had Solaria not caught her arm. For a moment, they stood still, the young exile holding the elder who had once cast her out. The matron's fury broke, giving way to something closer to regret. "I failed," she whispered, her voice thin. "I destroyed everything I vowed to protect." "Not everything," Solaria replied softly. "Not yet," a voice cut through from the chamber's entrance. Alex stepped from the shadows, hands raised to show he carried no weapons. "Fine speech," he said casually. But you may want to finish this talk. Your clan has bigger problems on the way." All eyes turned to him, suspicion and unease flickering across the hunters' faces. A chill ran through Solaria that had nothing to do with the air. "What problems?" she asked. "Sensor sweeps picked up 3 battle cruisers dropping out of hyperspace about 20 minutes ago," Alex answered. "Bone Reaper signatures. Heading here fast." His tone was grim. "Looks like your enemies think your civil war is the perfect time to settle old scores." The chamber erupted with shocked voices. The Bone Reapers were the Crimson Hunt's oldest rivals, a clan feared across dozens of systems for their endless hunger for conquest. If they were coming in force, it meant one thing: they intended to wipe out Solaria's people for good. "How long do we have?" Vash asked, forgetting his defeat in the face of this new danger. 2 hours, Alex replied. 3 if we're lucky. Depends how long they bombard before sending troops. The matron straightened, her madness clearing as the crisis forced her mind into focus. Then we prepare for battle. Alert the hunters. Activate the defenses. With respect, Solaria cut in. That's the wrong move. Every eye turned to her. Some glared with anger. Others waited, desperate for an alternative to certain destruction. The Bone Reapers expect us to fight like warriors, Solaria explained, her thoughts racing with lessons Alex had taught her. They want us to meet them head-on, to die bravely while they crush us with greater numbers and stronger weapons. What else can we do? Cathar demanded, recently freed in the chaos. Solaria glanced at Alex. Understanding passed between them. We fight like water. Within the hour, she was in command of the very hunters who had once exiled her. Her skill and her warning had earned reluctant respect. Even her rivals listened. Forget the usual defenses, she told the leaders. The Bone Reapers know them and know how to counter them. Instead, we evacuate the stronghold and scatter through the canyon system. Abandon our home like cowards? One elder snapped. Preserve our people so we can take it back later, Solaria corrected. The canyons give us cover, escape routes, and ground that favors small teams over mass attacks. Alex added tactical insight, his knowledge of asymmetric warfare crucial. Instead of trading strength for strength, they would strike at weak spots and vanish before the Bone Reapers could use their superior firepower. Hit and run, Alex told the hunters. Make them bleed for every step. Make them doubt if this fight is worth it. The plan broke with tradition, abandoning honor and glory, the values the Crimson Hunt had lived by for generations. But as they looked at the ruined stronghold and empty halls, the hunters saw that tradition had already failed. The assault came just as Alex predicted. 3 vast ships took orbit, raining plasma fire on the stronghold's defenses. But those defenses were empty, abandoned at the perfect moment. From her hidden post in the canyon walls, Solaria watched the bombardment tear apart her home. Centuries of history vanished in fire. It hurt like a wound. Yet it was better than watching her people slaughtered in a hopeless stand. First waves landing, Alex reported, his stolen sensors tracking the enemy. They're throwing everything into one push. Good for us. They won't expect resistance. The Bone Reapers advanced into the ruined stronghold like victors already crowned. Armored, armed, confident. They found only empty chambers. Their triumph seemed certain until the attacks began. Blasts from hidden nests. Explosives triggered at the right second. Quick strikes and sudden retreats. The Bone Reapers were fighting shadows in terrain they didn't understand. Solaria led one strike team herself, using every tactic Alex had drilled into her. They moved through the canyons like ghosts appearing, striking, and vanishing into paths only Crimson Hunt knew. But the Bone Reapers adapted fast. Their commander, Garnish, a giant with victories across 3 systems, began splitting his troops into mobile squads to chase the attackers. They're adjusting, Alex noted as scouts pressed deeper. We need to escalate before they find all our positions, Solaria nodded. Her mind was already on the final phase. Signal all teams. Time for convergence. It was the boldest maneuver her people had ever attempted. Instead of scattered strikes, all units drew together at the sacred grove, the site of their most revered rituals. The Bone Reapers took the bait, racing to intercept what seemed a mass gathering. But when they entered the grove, they walked into a trap. The grove was a natural amphitheater, riddled with caves perfect for hidden fire. More than that, it was sacred ground, a place of deep meaning for Solaria's people. Garnish entered at the head of his guard, weapon ready for slaughter. But at the center stood Solaria, blade drawn. "I claim the right of single combat," she declared, her voice carrying through the grove. "Let this be settled between champions, as in the old days." Garnish laughed, harsh and metallic. "You think I'll honor such customs? My warriors will cut you down where you stand." "Perhaps," Solaria said calmly. "But then your victory will always bear the mark of cowardice. History will remember you as the warlord who feared a single exile." The words struck home. Garnish's name rested on both conquest and personal strength. To be seen as afraid of one opponent, an outcast no less, was unthinkable. "Very well," he growled, signaling his warriors to step back. "I'll end you myself, then deal with your people at my leisure." The duel was fierce. Garnish was stronger, faster, and more skilled, his strikes precise and brutal. But Solaria moved like water, flowing around his blows, turning his power against him, and using the grove's uneven ground to her advantage. "Stand still and fight." Garnish shouted, his flawless technique failing to land a strike. "I am fighting," Solaria answered calmly. "Just not the way you expect." The end came when Garnish committed too fully to a killing stroke. Solaria wasn't where he thought. She slipped inside his guard, her blade striking the gap in his armor. The commander fell, his weapon slipping from his hand. Instead of finishing him, Solaria stepped back. "Your champion is defeated," she declared, her voice ringing through the grove. "Honor is satisfied. Take your ships and leave our space. Do not return." The silence stretched, tense as a drawn bow. Then Garnish spoke, voice heavy with pain but clear. "You fight unlike any warrior I've faced. How do you move with such certainty while holding your blade so lightly?" Solaria looked at her weapon, her reflection shining on its surface. "Because I know the difference between holding on and holding too tight. Between strength and rigidity. Between victory and vengeance." She offered him her hand, helping him to his feet despite gasps from both armies. "Today we were enemies. Tomorrow perhaps something else." Garnish studied her, then nodded. "Perhaps. But not today." Turning to his warriors, he commanded firmly despite his wounds, "We leave. The conquest ends." As the Bone Reapers withdrew, Solaria was surrounded by her people. Hunters who thought themselves doomed. Elders who had watched their world crumble. Children who had only known fear. What happens now? Vors asked for them all. Solaria looked across the grove. Once a place of ritual, it was now a symbol of change. "Now we rebuild," she said. But we rebuild it better. The weeks that followed tested her more than battle ever had. Rebuilding meant more than repairing ruins. It required reshaping their society. The matron had stepped down, her descent into madness a warning about absolute power. In her place, the Circle of Mothers created a new system, blending tradition with accountability and flexibility. "I'm honored by your trust," Solaria told the clan. "But what we need is not one strong leader. We need a community that understands strength comes from wisdom, not force. From knowing when to fight and when to show mercy." She turned to the hunters. "Let us lead together, not as ruler and ruled, but as partners with shared goals." The idea was bold, challenging long-held beliefs. But their near destruction had made change necessary, and Solaria's example gave her the authority to suggest it. Over time, the new structure took hold. Decisions were made collectively, with input from many voices and an eye on long-term consequences. Training in combat continued, but was expanded with lessons in diplomacy, philosophy, and strategy, much of it inspired by Alex. Solaria found him one day preparing to leave, his few belongings packed in the same battered bag he had always carried. "You're really going," she said, though she already knew. "My work here is finished," Alex replied, though his tone was softer than his words. "You haven't needed a teacher for weeks. How can you be so sure?" she asked. He smiled, the rare, genuine smile she valued most. "Because you stopped asking what you should do. You've started asking what you want to do. That's the difference between following a path and walking your own." They stood in silence, watching the transport crew prepare. "What you taught me," Solaria finally said. "It wasn't just about fighting, was it?" "What do you think?" Alex asked. She thought back to their first meeting. "You taught me strength isn't about never being defeated. It's about learning from defeat and becoming stronger." "Close," he said. "What else?" "That how you hold a weapon or anything shows your relationship to it. Too tight, and you become rigid. Too loose, and you lose control." Alex nodded. "And," she added, "the greatest battles aren't won with blades. They're won by changing hearts and minds, by showing others a better way to be strong." "Now you're getting it," Alex said, shouldering his pack. "One last lesson, always," she replied. "The blade you carry, it's not your sister's anymore. Not your ancestors'. It's yours. Shaped by your choices. Defined by how you use it. Don't dishonor it by trying to make it something it's not." Solaria drew the weapon, feeling its weight. The meteoric iron gleamed, sharp as ever. More than that, it felt right, balanced, an extension of herself. "Thank you," she whispered. When she looked up, Alex was already walking away. At the ramp, he turned with a familiar smile. "You'll be fine. Not without me, because of me." He disappeared into the ship, but his voice carried back, "Hey kid, now you're holding it right." Years later, stories spread of Solaria the Wise, the warrior who conquered through understanding, not force. But she cherished a different story, the tale of a human mercenary who taught her that true strength wasn't about how tightly you held a blade, but knowing when to hold it at all. She never saw Alex again, though rumors spoke of his work as a peacekeeper, resolving conflicts through wisdom instead of violence. And sometimes, late at night, she would practice the flowing forms he had taught her. Movements that turned combat into art, her grip perfect, now firm enough to guide, flexible enough to adapt, steady enough to show mercy.